Thank you, Robin. Welcome, everyone, to Make It Matter, Assessment Strategies in PBL. I'm glad you could make it today. Hopefully what you learned today will be helpful, and it's something that you can use right away, as Robin said. So the agenda for today is that we're going to actually start by talking assessment strategies. We're going to go through some things that you can use in your classroom for PBL assessment. Then we're going to talk about assessing the PBL project throughout, what that looks like, and then also making that assessment meaningful to you and to your students. And then we'll end with some resources that can hopefully help you on your PBL assessment path. So I like to start with this little comic on, I see you did well in school, but what real-world skills do you have? And he answers, tests. I can take tests. As teachers, we know that this is probably the last thing we want our students to leave the classroom saying. So when we think about PBL, we know that PBL, these are authentic learning experiences, and we want our assessment to match up with that. So we want our assessment to also be authentic. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means that we're creating tasks throughout and at the end that are worthwhile, they're significant, and they're meaningful, and not just to you as a teacher, but equally as important to the students. Some things to think about as we jump into some strategies here. We're going to talk rubrics in a moment, but before we do that, I want to kind of mention some things that aren't on a slide that are just important to consider as you're creating authentic assessments with your PBL units. So we want to make sure that the assessments that we're presenting to our students are essential. So they're not just contrived to produce a grade, but they actually hold value. They're meaningful. And that they're contextual and complex. It's not just a one and done. It's actually, done throughout the process and involves all parts of the process, of the PBL process. And they also involve students' own research. We want students to be finding that information and presenting that to an audience. And also that the assessment, they assess students' habits, not just a mere recall of information, but they're actually, we're actually learning what the students have learned through their habits and through those things that they're doing. And also, we want to always set our students up for success. So before we even start a PBL project, we want to make sure that they know exactly what we're going to be assessing them over. So we want to give them clear expectations at the very beginning. That way, they know early on what it is we're going to be testing throughout and looking for. And then we also, almost most importantly, want the assessment that we do to have a perceived value to the students. We don't want students to leave school and just think and really find no value in the assessments that they have taken. When we bring up testing or assessment to students, it usually comes with kind of a negative connotation, and we don't want that. We want our students to feel that the assessment is part of the learning process and that there's actually value in that. Now to talk about rubrics. Rubrics are a great way to encourage critical thinking and reflection. We can give these to our students early on in the process at the very beginning, and it gives our students a clear idea of what it is we're looking for. It also provides students with opportunities for improvement. So if they see, that maybe they're below the standard, or they're approaching the standard, we can show them clearly what it looks like to be at the standard, and even leaving room to go beyond that. And maybe we have an above standard column that allows them to show their learning, how they went above and beyond, to really help them see the value in the work that they're doing and how their efforts really are being noticed. Another assessment strategy to consider is a standards checklist. So the one that you see here is actually on one subject area, but if we're looking at it in a PBL unit, maybe we have all of the cross-curricular subject areas on the checklist itself, and we can show all of the standards that we're meeting throughout the project. And as students meet those standards, they can check them off. They can put when they've learned that standard, and maybe some thoughts or some reflections around what it is that they're doing that shows evidence of that learning. It's very specific, so it tells students and shows students exactly what it is they need to be learning, and it gives them some choice and ownership over what they can actually do to make that learning evident in the projects that they're participating in. The next one is student conferences. We do this probably regularly, but PBL offers some great opportunities throughout the process to really sit down with students, and it could be teacher to student, or it could be teacher to group, but they offer a great opportunity for us as teachers to really differentiate learning. We can identify the students' challenges and hopefully help them with some next steps. This is also a great time for students to share some of their successes so far with you. You know, especially as we approach class sizes over 20, we often have a hard time of just really focusing in on students individually. It's just really difficult. So this, by actually making this a part of your schedule, your monthly schedule or weekly schedule, it really helps you hone in on that student individually and gives them kind of a place to not only, like we said, share what they know, but gives you a chance to really interpret where they are in that process and what they might need, how they might need your support to help them along the way. Another form of another assessment strategy we can utilize in PBL is group assessments. So group assessments are great because they can be done student to student, or they could be done teacher to group. But if we look at it student to student, it gives students the opportunity to kind of assess each of their group members individually. It really allows students to step up and build some self-awareness where they can identify who they are within their group, but then they can also share with their other group members how they feel those group members are contributing to the tasks at hand. We can also do this teacher to group. So we can have, when we're meeting in our small groups, we could, instead of talking specifically to each individual student, we can show the power of teamwork and collaboration and kind of recognize the work they're doing as a team together. So group assessments are great, are great in PBL. And then student self-assessments, another great assessment strategy in PBL. So if we give our students, and again, we can give this to them early on, where they're kind of identifying their role within their group. Again, it builds that self-awareness. It makes them really recognize their contributions to the group. Another great way to do this kind of as a whole class is to have a self-assessment tracker. And you could see in the above picture, the teacher and the student in this picture are doing just that. Where at the bottom they have like an I did not participate, that's a 1, and the 2 is I barely participated, needed a lot of reminders, and then the 3 is I worked with my group and I did my job, and then the 4 is I did my job and I encouraged others. So it's kind of a great way for students to look at how they've contributed to their group, and it gives you a good, as a teacher, it gives you a good overall picture of how the class is doing together. So just thinking about those assessment strategies we went through, which of these assessment strategies do you utilize in your classroom currently? I'll give you a moment to go ahead and make those choices. So rubrics, standards, checklists, student conferences, group assessments, and student self-assessments. So it looks like a lot of us are already using rubrics. They are wonderful and a great resource. And group assessments, awesome. I'm glad to hear that those are being utilized as well. So now that we've talked about some strategies, let's talk about the importance of assessing our students throughout the project. So there are several ways we can do this, and we want to look at this daily, weekly, monthly, and then, of course, the end project culmination, the product that comes from that. So first of all, for daily checkups, there are several things that we can do to kind of gauge the temperature in the room. And so one of the strategies is the fist to 5, and I'm sure lots of you are using this already, but this is a good strategy to kind of just get a feel for your class in the moment. It also helps maybe to differentiate some groups. So if you see there's several students who are holding up a 1, which means they didn't understand the content at all, you could pull those students quickly and get them back on track so they can stay up to par with their peers. And the 2 is just I need to still go over it again. The 3 is I think I get it, but I'm not completely comfortable with the topic. A 4 is I get it, but then the 5 is I get it and I think I can explain it or teach it to others. So fist to 5 is a great strategy to use. And then also the thumbs upside down strategy, which is very similar, but it's just a thumbs up if they've got it, a thumbs to the side if they're getting there, and then a thumbs down if they need more support. So that was daily. Let's now talk weekly. So over the course of a week, we hope our students are trekking along in the PBL process pretty well. So here are several ways that we can kind of connect with our students and get a good feel for where they're at and assess them and maybe meet their needs and address those challenges. So standards checklist, again, we discussed earlier, but this would be a good time. If you gave it to them in the beginning of the PBL process, they could kind of check them off as you go, and maybe you can just quickly take a second to collect them and look through them and and this will give you a good gauge of, like I said, where the challenges are and how you can help them. One-on-one conferencing weekly is a really great idea, and I know it gets difficult with our larger class sizes, but weekly check-ins in this way is a really good way to truly connect and figure out what your student still needs, and also to hear about their successes. And then just having a weekly goal sheet. So this is just where you you have each day of the week on there, and then they set a goal for each day, and then they address their action steps. How are they meeting these goals each day? And then maybe you have an area where you can show them some gratitude, or maybe this can be, you can even extend this to other students where they're checking in with another student, and the student is showing them gratitude, and just a way to say, like, good job on meeting that goal. At the end of the week, maybe you look at all the goals they set for themselves over the course of each day, and this will give you a good understanding of where they are in that process. And then finally, that self-assessment tracker. This is, again, a good way to kind of view the class as a whole. And then we have monthly conferences. So this is a great time to do those teacher-led conferences where you're sitting with that specific PBL group who's working on a certain task. You can address their needs as a group, or you can address them individually, but trying to sit down, actually scheduling out that time where you're intentionally meeting with every single group. But a month into the PBL unit, you're probably getting close to finishing, so this might be a time to kind of talk about what that end product is going to look like, what still needs to be done, and those type of things that really get students focused on that end piece. These can also be student-led. So again, the power of having a student-led conference is that they can have open conversations, and they can address where they feel each of the group members are in the process. They can also talk about, this is a great time where, a lot of kids like to have a certain role. So maybe they define roles for that end culmination project. And maybe they're just talking about ways that they can help each other. All of this is really powerful as we look at the PBL process. And then finally, as we look at that end product, the project culmination, it's always so great to have that end product piece where students are presenting information to a group of people, an authentic audience. In some of the work that you see in these pictures here, students are creating, one of the students in this project created a game for high schoolers to teach them about debt and saving money. And then the other project was they created healthy recipes, and so we have a chef here who they're sharing their recipes with. So it's always important that at the end of every project that we look at assessment, that we're looking at that end product as a way to assess. So maybe we have a checklist where we're going through those learning objectives that we put forth in that standards checklist. Maybe we have that for our students, and as we're going through and through this experience, we're checking off to see if they've met those learning objectives. So making it meaningful, we've touched on it throughout, but good assessment in PBL gives students the opportunity to be given feedback, to have time for reflection, and also to have time to revise and make their work even better. So when we talk about feedback, we want feedback to be practical, we want it to be specific, and we want it to be actionable. Let's think about that for a moment, because as educators, we know why we assess. We know that we need to give our students a grade. We need to figure out what it is that they've learned from what we've presented, and what their takeaways were. But it's also equally important to think again about the value that it provides our students with. So we want to provide our students with feedback that they can do something with. So when we say actionable, what is it that we're giving our students that allows them to take that and maybe formulate next steps? And then throughout that process, they're also we're checking in and we're saying, okay, maybe you've done this, but you still need to do this. It's instead of just saying, oh, great job, it's you did a really great job, how about now trying this? And just giving them an idea of where to go. So providing that feedback along the way really allows students to see that the assessment process does hold meaning and is valuable. As far as reflection goes, this is really important as well, to be thinking about giving our students those opportunities to make their work better. So what can they do, or what can we do as teachers to really get them thinking improvement? Well, we can just, in a journal, we can have a reflection journal where we ask these questions. So what parts of my work can be improved? This will help students really identify those areas that they need to work on. Some students will probably, we've all had those students that find this difficult to kind of really hone in on what it is they're doing that's maybe not up to par. But through time and practice, this is a great time to kind of to show students that it's okay to recognize that you have some weaknesses, and what's important is what you do with that, what you do with it after. And so then stating the question, what specific tasks do I need to do in order to improve these areas? So what is it that I need to do as a student to make my work even better? And that goes right into revision. So giving students the opportunity to improve is very, very important. We really want to set our students up for success. So if we just had one culmination end exam that just went through the entire, maybe say for a project over 8 weeks of work, what does that really do for our students? We've not really provided them in that case necessarily then with opportunities to improve along the way. And we really want to do that. We want this to be meaningful. We want this to be significant to them, and we want them to feel like it's worthwhile. So giving students opportunities to improve their work along the way is really, really important. And that kind of speaks to those student-created artifacts. So when you're doing your PBL, your PBL unit with your students, giving students an opportunity to produce something that shows their learning. In this picture here, this goes back to that. It's a project it's a Blue Apple project called 50 Years, and students created a board game that they used with their high school friends. They were teaching their high school friends about the importance of saving and the dangers of debt. So the teacher was able to look at this game that they created and see the information that they actually learned throughout the process. That made it very easy for the teacher to check in that way. It also, it's a great time to demonstrate learning and understanding. And so use these student-created artifacts to do just that. We also want to make sure when we're doing these that we really make it known to our students that we want them to address the driving question. So if the driving question is in your driving question, you should really be specific about what it is that the students should learn. And then that rubric that we talked about earlier will really spell out what that looks like. So when students are creating their artifacts, having that rubric in hand that really spells out what it is you're looking for and what it is they should be learning is really helpful and truly sets our students up for success. And then that final event, presenting their product that they've created to an authentic audience, really allows students to step up their game and increases their accountability, and it really allows you as a teacher to truly show what they know. Usually when students know they're going to present to an authentic audience, they're really going to give it their all. So this also allows them to demonstrate that it shows them that learning and what they're doing is really applicable to the real world. So it is meaningful, and they really can make a difference. And at the end of the day, when we think about true authentic learning and what it is we really want our students to leave with, we really want them to feel like that their work matters and that their work is applicable outside of the classroom. And by having these days where they're showing others that is really, really important, and it gives you a great opportunity to see exactly what it is your students have learned. So as we look at PBL assessment, we went through some strategies. We've talked about how to make it meaningful. We talked about assessing throughout. There are some great resources out there that can kind of help you on your PBL assessment track. So one of them is Edutopia, and this link is active, so you can just click right on that, resources for assessment in PBL. That's a great resource with lots of different resources kind of linked within there. PBL Works is another great resource. They've kind of compiled like a database of different ways assessment can be utilized in PBL, and you can find all of that on that link as well. Another great resource is John Spencer, and he does a lot of great work with PBL. But one of the things he does through this link is he talks about what PBL should look like what assessment should look like in a PBL unit. So check that one out as well. And then finally, you guys probably know us here at Blue Apple, we've been spending some time this past year developing Blue Apple projects that are PBL units, and you can actually access those units and see what they're all about through that link there. And as a webinar special, we're going to be offering a coupon code that Robin is going to be telling you about here in a moment. Before I turn it back over to her, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today, and have a happy holidays.